Hey guys, welcome back to my house. We are here on Sunday morning and we're going to make some biscuits, one of my favorite things, and I'm going to show you guys a couple of options to modify these along the way. So, quick rundown of what we got. We've got flour, obviously, some sugar, baking powder, a little bit of lemon juice, some milk, and butter. And the reason for the milk and the lemon juice you'll see in just a minute. But first step that we need to do is we need to cut in our butter, and we're going to use a pastry blender, but I need 2 cups of flour to get started here. And you don't want to don't pack the flour. Okay, so we've got 2 cups of flour. And then we also need a bit of sugar. So we're going to go with a tablespoon of sugar. And we're going to throw that right into our flour as well. And then this is a baking powder biscuit, so we need obviously baking powder. So we're going to use 3 teaspoons of baking powder or 1 tablespoon. Okay, so got our baking powder. So all of our dry ingredients we have here. And what we're going to do is what we call the biscuit method for mixing, because when we're doing shortbreads we have like muffin method, creaming, or biscuit. So this item lends its name to the mixing method. So what I have is a half a cup. The recipe that calls for a half a cup of shortening. I don't actually have shortening at home, but I have butter. So you're going to get a different sort of texture out of this. You're going to get a different texture out of this. But that's okay. Same thing with pie dough. You can use shortening or butter. You're just going to get a different texture. And I like to use butter because I like the flavor of it better than that of shortening. So I'm going to cut these into little cubes here. And you don't have to do this, but it just makes my life a little bit easier. And you want to make sure that you're using cold butter or cold shortening when you do this. And then I'm just going to add these into my mix over here. All right, and then I don't have any buttermilk, so I'm going to basically just sour my own milk to make buttermilk. So what I've got is, or what I'm going to need here is 3/4 of a cup of milk, and it's basically 1 tablespoon of lemon juice for each cup of milk. To sour that on your own. So I'm going to go just under. Alright, we're back. We had to take a quick little pause there. But we've got our lemon juice added into our milk, and we're just going to give this a little stir. The thing is, the longer this sits, the more it's going to sour. So make sure that you don't do this first. I usually get my butter into my flour and start cutting this in. And if you have buttermilk, you can just simply use buttermilk. I don't typically buy buttermilk because I'll use it once and then it'll sit in the fridge and I'll find it, a month later. So if you have buttermilk, feel free to use that. If you don't want to do buttermilk, you don't have to do that either. I just feel like it gives it extra fluff and more texture, and I kind of appreciate it a little more. So, all right, so with our pastry blender here, we're just cutting in the butter into, our dry mix. So flour, sugar. Did I add salt? I don't think I added any salt in here. Let's get that. So we need about a teaspoon of salt, or 2 pinches. All right. So you're just cutting this in until it looks like breadcrumbs. If you don't have a pastry blender, there's a couple of things you can do. You can use a couple of butter knives and cut this in, or you can use the tines of like a fork and you can kind of mash it in, or you can use a box grater and grate the cheese, or grate the butter and then add that in and then give it a little mix with a couple of knives. Okay, so pretty happy with this. Most of my little chunks of butter are pretty small, size of like peas or smaller, like green peas. All right. All right, so we're good here. Then we're gonna take our, I always make a well, I don't know why, I do. Then we have our soured milk, and we're just gonna add that in, or our homemade buttermilk. And then we're just gonna kind of toss this around. You don't wanna overmix this, because we want this to be super kind of flaky and crumbly. And if you work it a lot, you're gonna build up a bunch of gluten. So I typically turn it around the bowl just to get everything into a group or gather together. Like this. And then, this part's really important. Take a little bit of flour on our board, and then I also will flour my hands because I want the dough not to stick to me. So, if you flour your hands, the dough won't stick to you as bad. This is a soft dough, so we're like a 3-to-1 ratio, flour to liquid. We have other things that we'll be doing along the way, like muffins and cookies. Those are typically like a 2-to-1 ratio, and then we have like pour batters, so like basically like waffles and pancakes, those sort of things. Those are all, I have a kind of a mess over here. I'm not sure what happened, but I just started talking and piling flour. All right, so here is our biscuit dough, and I'm just gonna pat this out. I always see people that are grabbing like rolling pins and things like that. You don't need that, it's unnecessary. Okay, so we're just gonna pat this out. So I have these ring cutters. And I'm going to use this guy. Not a little bit smaller one. This guy, maybe? Yeah. Alright, and we're going to just punch out these biscuits. Now one thing, this is where this, no, not big enough. We need to dip this cutter into our flour so that it doesn't stick. And the one thing that you don't want to do is when you're punching your biscuits, you don't want to twist it, because if you twist it, you're going to basically cause the, if you punch the biscuit straight down when it's in the heat, when it's rising, it's going to puff straight up. But if you twist it as you're punching the biscuit, there's a chance that it's going to bend to the side. So instead of raising straight up, it might be like kind of wonky. Okay. So we have our biscuits, and I always do mine shoulder to shoulder. They don't dry out as much. If you spread them out, you allow more surface air around those biscuits, and they could dry out. Now, typically when we're doing biscuits, you don't want to reuse the scrap dough, because when I'm molding it and reforming it, I'm basically creating a little extra gluten, and we don't really want that. But I'm greedy and I'm not going to waste anything, so I'm going to continue to roll this stuff out and use it all up. And then I go about the thickness of 1 knuckle. Okay, so 1 knuckle thick is what I'm doing. You can do them thicker, but I wouldn't go much thinner, just because the thinner you go, the more, the drier it might be. All right, let's see if we can get one more. I don't know if we can get one more out of this. Okay, and then there's one more thing we have to do before we get these guys in the oven. We're gonna do a free-form biscuit here. I don't know, it's kind of a little one, but it's the runt of the litter. All right, so here's the last step we have to do. You take your thumb and you're just gonna give this a little press right in the center of that biscuit, and this will help these rise up evenly, okay? So I have my oven already set to 450. We're gonna throw these in the oven for just about 10 minutes. I usually set my timer at 9 minutes, a minute early, and I check them. And then if they're not quite done, then I'll put them back in. But I'm gonna go for 9 minutes. We'll get these in the oven and then we'll be back. All right, we are about to ding over here. We did 9 minutes originally. I checked them, they were still a little bit pale, so I added 2 more minutes to it. So we should be at about 11 minutes total. My oven is convection, which means there's a fan in there that's blowing and circulating the heat around. So that will make a difference. The other thing that's going to make a difference for you is the thickness and how big you make these. Let's get these out of here, and then we'll talk. Oops, there we go. It's happy biscuits here. Let's see, some of these are nice, split and rose up well. You can see these ones here are the ones that I remolded from my dough. They're not quite as cute, but they're still going to taste great. So back to the oven. Things that are going to make a difference for you is the thickness, how thick you make these when you pat your dough out, and then also whether or not you put them together. I put mine together because I feel like they stay a little more moist. If you spread them out, they are going to be a little drier. So that will also determine your cook time. All right. So our only job at this point is to figure out exactly how we're going to fill these up. So I've got some honey. We might do. I've got some raspberry preserves that we made at home, and I also have some eggs. So we're gonna mess around with these and see what we can figure out. Probably egg sandwiches are what we're gonna do, but you guys can do whatever you want. Thanks for coming by, hanging out. We'll see you next time.